AITA for rejecting my greedy ex, who came crawling back after I got rich? My name is Brandon. I am 31 years old, and for a long time I thought my life was exactly what it was supposed to be, not perfect, but stable enough that I did not have to worry too much about the future. I studied business administration at a state university, not because it was my passion, but because it seemed like the most logical choice. My mother always said that the important thing was not doing what you loved, but making sure you never went without. I listened to her. In time, I finished my degree, got a job at a small logistics and distribution company in Austin, Texas, and grew accustomed to the routine. A 9-to-5 schedule, a steady paycheck, few surprises. It was not exciting, but it was not a disaster either. It was during that time that I met Jenna. She was completely different from me. She had an energy that filled any room she entered, self-assured, ambitious, with a way of speaking that made everything sound possible. From the beginning, she made it clear that she did not want an average life. I was not born to live counting every dollar, she told me on one of our first dates. At the time, it did not seem like a warning sign to me. On the contrary, I saw it as something inspiring. I thought having someone like that by my side could push me to be better. For the first few months, everything went well. We went out on weekends, talked for hours, made plans. She spoke of travel, of starting businesses, of a life without limitations. I would listen and nod, not because I completely shared that vision, but because I wanted to. After 1 year, we decided to live together. The apartment was not large, nor was it in the best part of town. It was a modest 2-bedroom unit in a working-class neighborhood on the east side of Austin, what I could afford without going into debt. When Jenna saw it for the first time, she smiled, but that smile did not last long. "It's fine," she said. "I guess it's a start." I did not think much of it at the moment. I figured it was normal to want something better. The first few months of living together were calm, though there were small details I began to notice little by little. Jenna did not see money the same way I did. For me, it was something to be managed carefully. For her, it was something to be used. Every time I got my paycheck, she already had ideas on what to spend it on. New clothes from the mall, dinners at nicer restaurants, weekend outings that she claimed were necessary to live well. At first, I tried to adapt. I thought it was a matter of finding a balance, but that balance never arrived. "You can't live like this your whole life," she would tell me. "You work too hard to earn so little." I tried to explain that I was just starting out, that with time I could grow within the company, but she did not see it that way. For Jenna, a person's worth was directly related to what they earned. She did not say it directly at first, but it was evident. "My friend's partner earns twice what you do," she commented once, as if it were a casual remark. I did not answer, not because it did not bother me, but because I knew any response would only make the situation worse. Still, I kept trying. I worked longer hours, took on extra shifts, and cut my own expenses to meet her wants, but it was never enough. And that is when something began to change in me, not just in the relationship, but in how I saw my life. My job stopped making sense. Each day felt heavier than the last, not because it was difficult, but because it was not taking me anywhere. And then an idea appeared. It did not come all at once. It was something that had been lingering in my mind for a while, a business of my own, something small at first, something that was mine. I had always liked coffee, not just drinking it, but preparing it. For years, I had taught myself, trying different beans and various methods. It was the only thing that truly interested me outside of work. The idea of opening a small coffee shop started as a distant thought, but slowly it became real. When I finally told Jenna, her reaction was exactly what I feared. "A coffee shop," she repeated. She smiled, but not with enthusiasm. "That sounds nice." I explained my plan. Start small, reinvest the profits, grow little by little. I talked about short-term sacrifices. She listened, but she was not convinced. Still, I decided to do it. I quit my job. It was one of the hardest decisions of my life, but also the most honest. For the first time, I was doing something because I wanted to. The first few months were hard, very hard. I had little money, so I started with the basics. A small storefront in a local strip mall, simple equipment, endless days. I was learning everything as I went, mistakes, losses, small victories, but something was different. I felt alive. At home, however, everything was different. Jenna began to change. "And how did that go for you today?" she would ask, avoiding even saying the words coffee shop. Over time, she stopped pretending. I can't believe you left your job for this, she said one night. You went from something stable to serving coffee. I tried to explain that it was a process, that it needed time, but she did not want processes, only results. The money was scarce at first, and instead of spending it, I reinvested almost all of it. I gave myself a minimum salary, just enough to cover the basics. To me, it made sense. To her, it did not. You're cheap, she told me. Now you have your own thing, and you're still living like you're broke. I tried to explain. If I do not reinvest, this will not grow. Her response was immediate. Then it's a bad business. That sentence changed something, not just because of what she said, but how she said it. Without doubt, without respect. I have seen how businesses work, she continued. They generate money. A lot of money. That is television, I replied. No, that is reality. She shook her head. Your reality is mediocre. The silence that followed was heavy. I'm not going to stay in this, she added. And right there, I knew something had broken. The conversation did not end there. In fact, it was just beginning. Jenna was quiet for a few seconds, as if organizing her thoughts. Then she crossed her arms and looked at me intently. I've been thinking, she finally said, and I don't think this makes sense anymore. I did not reply immediately. There was something in her tone that did not sound impulsive. It sounded like a decision. What do you mean? I asked, though deep down I already knew. Us, she replied bluntly. This life? She motioned around, referring to the apartment. All of it. This isn't what I want. The silence became uncomfortable. I thought you were different, she continued. That you had ambition. That word appeared again. Ambition, but it did not mean the same thing to both of us. I'm building something, I said, trying to stay calm. She let out a short, humorless laugh. Building? Really? She shook her head. Are you playing businessman? That made me tense up. No, I'm not playing. Of course you are, she retorted. You left a stable job for something that barely lets you survive. It's temporary. Everything in your life is temporary, she replied. But it never changes. That line hit me harder than I expected, because in a way she was right, but not in the way she thought. Things take time, I said. Not everything is immediate. I don't have time to waste, she answered without hesitation. That is when I understood this was no longer just another argument. It was the end. So what do you want? I asked. She looked at me directly. To leave. The word hung in the air. Simple, direct, final. I did not feel surprised. Maybe because I had seen it coming for a while. Just like that. I asked. It's not easy, she said. But it's necessary. She paused and then added, I met someone. That sentence did make me react. I did not show it right away, but I felt it. Someone. I repeated. Yes. Since when? That doesn't matter. Of course it mattered, but I did not push. Who is he? I finally asked. His name is Trevor. She waited a few seconds before continuing, as if measuring the impact. He has his own company. There it was. It was not just another person. It was a comparison. He's doing very well, she added. He knows what he's doing. I did not respond. He's not wasting his time, she continued. He's not just trying things. I'm not wasting my time either, I said, this time with firmness. Yes, you are, she shot back immediately. And you know it. The conversation started to escalate. It's not all about money, I said. She looked at me as if I had said something absurd. Everything is about money. That was her answer. No nuance, no doubt. Without money, there's no life, she added. There's no peace, there's nothing. There are other things. Name one, she challenged. I opened my mouth to answer, but I stopped because I understood it would not matter. Exactly, she said, seeing my silence. You have nothing. That hurt, not because of the insult, but because it came from someone I once thought was on my side. And he does? I asked. He has all of that. Yes, she replied without hesitation, and then she said the sentence that broke everything. He gives me the kind of life that your salary will never be able to provide. She did not shout. She did not raise her voice. She said it with complete certainty, as if it were an obvious truth. I remained silent, not because I had nothing to say, but because in that moment I understood something. It was not about the business or the money. It was about how she saw me, and that was not going to change. Jenna picked up her purse. I'm not going to stay in this, she said. This isn't the life I want. She walked to the door. She stopped for a second before leaving. I hope someday you understand. And she was gone. The door closed with a sharp click. I did not follow her. I did not try to stop her. There was no point. I did not sleep that night. But it was not sadness. It was emptiness, as if something had been extinguished. The next day, I got up early and went to the coffee shop. I opened it like any other day. At first, everything felt strange, the silence, the absence. But slowly, I began to notice something different. There was less noise, less pressure. For the first time in a long while, I could think clearly, without having to justify every decision, and that changed everything. I started to organize the business better, reviewed expenses, adjusted prices, improved the quality of the coffee, and listened more to the customers. Small changes, nothing spectacular, but they were constant. Week by week, things began to improve, not explosively, but genuinely. I reinvested everything I could. I continued to live on the bare minimum. There were difficult days, many of them, but there was a key difference. I no longer had someone telling me it was all pointless, and that made all the difference. With time, I made bigger improvements. I bought better equipment, expanded the menu, and worked on the place's image. The coffee shop stopped being an attempt. It became a business, a real one, not a millionaire's enterprise, but stable and growing. Months passed, then years. I opened a second location, then a third. It was not fast. It was calculated. Every step had a purpose. While others started spending more as they earned more, I did the opposite. I kept my lifestyle the same until one day I realized something. I was not just surviving anymore. I was building, truly building. Time passed without me noticing exactly when the final shift occurred. One day, I was counting coins to pay suppliers, and the next I was reviewing numbers that would have seemed unreal to me months before. The coffee shop grew, then it became 2, then 3. I stopped personally taking every order. I started coordinating teams, making bigger decisions, thinking long-term. I did not want to grow fast. I wanted to grow well, and I did. For a long time, I maintained the same lifestyle, not by obligation, but by choice, until I finally allowed myself certain changes. I bought a house. It was not extravagant, but it was mine, in a quiet, safe suburban neighborhood, with no need to impress anyone. I also treated myself to something personal. I had always liked sports cars, not because I needed one, but simply because I liked them. So I bought one, not to prove anything, just because I could. My life was not perfect, but it was stable, orderly, and built with intention. And then one day, the past returned without warning. I was in one of my coffee shops, reviewing inventory with the manager. It was a normal day. Until I saw her. She did not arrive with confidence, not with that presence she used to have. In fact, she went unnoticed at first, but when I looked up, there she was. Jenna, thinner, more tired looking. There was something in her gaze that was not there before. She did not say anything at first. She stood a few feet away, as if unsure whether to approach. I did not speak either. Finally, she took a few steps toward me. "Hi, Brandon." Her voice was no longer firm. "Hello," I replied without emotion. She looked around. "I've seen what you've done," she said. "You have several locations." "Yes." A short answer. I was not there to explain anything to her. She nodded slowly. "You can tell," she added. "Everything looks good." I did not respond. She took a deep breath, as if preparing herself. "I want to apologize." The phrase came out directly, without beating around the bush. I looked at her, my expression unchanged. "I was unfair to you," she continued. "I was ambitious." She paused. "No, I was greedy." She looked down. I thought I knew what I wanted, but I didn't. I waited. I knew she was not finished. "Trevor," she said, almost ashamed. He didn't have a company. I could not help but let out a small, humorless laugh. What a surprise. She closed her eyes for a second. "He lied to me," she continued. "He convinced me to take out loans in my name." I felt the atmosphere shift. He said he was going to invest it, that he would pay it all back. A pause. He disappeared. Silence. He left me with debt. A lot of it. I looked at her. She was no longer the same person, but she was not a stranger either. She was the result of her choices. "And now you're here?" I asked. "Yes." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because I know I hurt you." Another pause. "And because I want to fix things." That is when something became perfectly clear to me. "Fix them," I repeated. "Yes, I know I have no right, but..." I cut her off. "No, you don't." She fell silent. She did not argue. She did not insist. And that, oddly, bothered me more. You know what's interesting? I said, taking a step toward her. All of this. I gestured around. I built it exactly the way I told you I would. She did not answer. Slowly, reinvesting, without overspending. I looked her directly in the eye. Exactly what you called mediocre. Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry. Brandon, I cut her off. Let me finish. I was not yelling, but every word was heavy. You left with someone because he could give you the kind of life that my salary could never provide. She swallowed hard. And what did he give you? Silence. Debt, lies, abandonment. I took another step. Funny, isn't it? The silence became suffocating. And now you come back, I continued. Not when I was starting out. Not when I had nothing. Now. She shook her head. It's not because of that. I smiled faintly. Of course it is. I looked at her without softening my gaze. You care about the result, not the process. You care about the money, not how it is earned. And you care about being on the winning side. The tears finally fell. I'm not that person. Yes, you are, was my immediate reply. Without a doubt. And the worst part is, you know it. The silence was absolute. You just thought you were going to win. A pause. But you lost. That word broke her. Please, she said. For the first time, she sounded desperate. I have no one. I'm in debt. I lost everything. I looked at her, evaluating. Not her situation, but what I felt. And the answer was simple. Nothing. You made your decisions, I said. Just like I made mine. I turned to walk away, but stopped for a second. The difference is, I accepted the consequences from the beginning. A pause. Now leave. I don't want to see you again. She stood motionless, and then she started crying uncontrollably. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm truly sorry. I'm sure you are, I replied. But I don't have time for empty apologies. That was what completely crushed her. I don't even have money for food, she added. I turned my head slightly. Josh, I called. One of the employees came over. Yes, boss. I pointed toward her. Get her something to eat and escort her to the exit. Josh hesitated for a second, but nodded. Jenna shook her head. No, she murmured. She did not look up. She turned and walked toward the door. Slowly, before she left, she stopped for a second and then was gone. The door closed, and with it, everything was over. I stood in silence for a few moments. Is everything okay? Josh asked. Yes. Life went on. Customers kept coming. Orders continued. Hours later, I closed the shop. I walked out to the parking lot. There was my car. I got in, started the engine. I sat for a few seconds with my hands on the steering wheel, thinking not about her, but about the entire journey, every decision, every sacrifice, every moment it would have been easier to give up, and about how all of it had led me to this exact point. Not by luck, not because of someone else. Because of me. I drove off. The city was the same, but I was not, and that was enough. Comment. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this with me today. It reminds me how important it is to hold on to your self-respect no matter what others say. You deserve to set clear boundaries that protect your peace and well-being. Taking full responsibility for your own choices is what truly builds your inner strength. I hope this encourages you to focus on healing by choosing the path that feels right for you. Be gentle and kind to yourself during those moments of growth and change. It's okay to pick a life of calm and steady progress over anything that disrupts your balance. Remember that your worth comes from within, not from someone else's opinion. You have everything you need to create a genuine and fulfilling future on your terms. Let's keep supporting each other as we learn to honor our own hearts and live with intention. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.